Hey guys, Caleb here from CDBS Studios, and I don't like to share my personal life a lot on this channel as I like to keep my discussions strictly into film and TV, but I figured I would make an exception today as I recently got back from a family vacation to the Universal Orlando Resort in Orlando, Florida, and did a couple days at the different Orlando parks. And over the course of that time, I started thinking a lot about the parks and how a lot they have changed over the years since I had originally visited them. And that there's a lot of things that I didn't know going to the parks that I wish I did. So, to kind of help other people who might be having the same issues as me, I decided to make this video series, a series where I'm going to go through all the parks at the Universal Studios Orlando Resort, and I'm going to talk about each of the parks, give some tips and tricks about each of them, and then I'm also going to go ahead at the end of these because, as you might know from the channel, I like to rank things. So I'm going to go ahead and also rank every land at the parks and also every ride at the parks. So, without further ado, let's jump into the video and talk about the tips, tricks, and rankings for the Universal Studios Orlando Resort parks. Specifically in this video, I'm going to be sticking to Universal Epic Universe. If you are also planning on visiting Universal Studios Florida and Universal Islands of Adventure, then go ahead and check out the other two videos in this series after you finish up this one. But before we dive into my thoughts on the park, we're going to talk about some of my overall things. The first thing that I'm going to say straight up is that the date for my visit was January 2026. So if there have been any major changes to the park after this date, I will not know about them. So just know that going in. So the first tip the tip that I'm going to be talking about today is going to be regarding the Universal Florida app. Now, I would highly recommend that you download this app prior to your visit to the park, as this will be the easiest way for you to get the map of the park, which is very, very useful to get around. And you also can see all of the wait times for the various different attractions, which makes it very helpful to know what to do and maybe what you skip over for the meantime and then come back to it. So I would highly recommend that. And I also highly recommend that you also set up an account beforehand, because the app will be your primary method for ordering food while you're at the park, as you can obviously order it at kiosks and stuff at the park, but the easiest way to do it is actually on the app, as you will order it and you can go pick it up with mobile ordering. And there are even a few restaurants at the park where you sit down at a table, order on the app, and then you will tell in the app what table you're sitting at and they will bring your food to you. So highly recommend that you definitely set up an account beforehand, because you definitely will be needing it for food. And speaking of food, one thing I will call up very early on is that regarding the park's food stands, there's not a lot of places to sit when coming to the food, as most of the times, as if there are sitting areas by a food stand, it's usually away in a separate sitting area, not like right next to the booth. And the restaurants themselves are very limited when it comes to their seating in a lot of places. So just be wary that a couple restaurants may not have actual sitting places for you. So you might either have to stand or be expecting to walk a little bit in order to sit down after you get your food. And the next thing I'm going to be talking about is the lockers. Now, most of the attractions at this park, you can actually have your stuff on you in your pockets, but there are those occasional rides where you do actually have to take everything out of your pockets. And if you're planning to take a backpack, there are many rides at this park that you cannot have your backpack on you for. So when it comes to the lockers on the attractions, they're actually very generous with them, as most of the time, actually all of the time, on every attraction where you cannot have your backpack sitting at your feet or you need to have everything out of your pockets, they actually offer the lockers in the queue for the attraction. It's usually near when you get to the point of actually boarding the attraction when you get to the lockers. And the best thing about these lockers is they are the kind where you load on one side, and then after you get off the ride, you come back on the other side of the lockers and can retrieve your stuff. And the thing that makes these lockers also very, very accessible is that they actually use your face in order to rent the lockers, as you will go to these little terminals, you will press a button that scans your face, it'll rent a locker, and when you come to the other side, it'll scan your face again, opening the locker. So it's very, very convenient to use these lockers, so I would highly recommend that. And also, the lockers are very, very small. So if you're planning to take any form of backpack with you, definitely make sure it's a very small backpack, as you don't have a lot of space, especially in the couple rides. You do also need to take everything out of your pocket. So just be wary of that. Moving into talking about the specific lands, we're going to start with Celestial Park, the entrance and main hub to the entirety of Epic Universe. And overall, this is a very good entry land for the entire park, as this is a very beautiful area that has multiple fountains, multiple places to sit and cool off, multiple different shops and food options scattered around the place. From, you have a pretty good pizza location called Pizza Moon. You have great candy stores, a great Thai place, and there are multiple different great food options scattered around Celestial Park that make it very, very good place to just sit and relax. And the other thing that I will also call out that is really good to know is that actually at park close, I would recommend you don't leave the park in such a rush, because there is a really cool show that they do at park close at the main fountain that is really, really cool, and I would highly recommend you stay around to see it. Moving into the attractions we have at this land, our first is Constellation Carousel, which is pretty much the basic kind of carousel that you would come to expect from any kind of park. It's not really doing anything special, but I will admit the ride vehicles and the overall style of Constellation Carousel is very, very cool. But overall, it is a carousel, so just know that going in. And then you have the other ride at this land, Stardust Racers, and I'm not going to lie, this is a highlight of the whole park, as this is a very, very cool ride, roller coaster that is very, very fun, and it is one of my favorite things at the entire park. And the thing that makes this ride also very, very cool is that this ride actually has two different tracks on it. You have the green and the yellow, and I highly recommend, if the times line up for you good, then I highly recommend you do both tracks, as both tracks are slightly different. I personally prefer the green track, but I would say do both. And also, this ride has also a really cool reference to an 80s movie on the back of the vehicles. I'm not going to spoil it if you don't know what it is, but when you're at the park, at the loading station, maybe take a look at the back of the racer vehicles, and you're going to see a really cool 80s reference that I really do enjoy. Moving into our next land, we have How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk. And this is a really, really good land that has some pretty good overall theming. They did a pretty decent job at translating this very well-known animated location to live action very, very well. And I will say the food is also really good at this location. Of course, you have the dining room area in this land that is very, very good. I personally actually prefer Spitfire Grill, which is a really good dining location apart that not many people go to, and it actually serves these really good mac and cheese cones that I do think are really, really good, so highly would recommend that. And there also is this land is also very, very cool in nature, as this land is built around a lot of water, so this is also a really cool land just to hang out in, as it does also bring the temperature down a little bit. Moving into our first ride on the land, we have Fire Drill, and this is the land's resident water ride where you're sitting in boats with cannons, water cannons specifically, and it's literally meant to be a water ride, so do expect to get a little bit wet on this one. But overall, this is a very, very simple attraction, also very kid-friendly, so if you are traveling with little kids, this is a pretty good ride that you can actually take them on. The next ride that we actually have is Dragon Racers Rally, which is a simple little spinner ride that you can use these wings on the capsules to actually perform tricks with your capsule, and if you're good enough, you can actually flip your capsule fully around and do a full 360, which is pretty cool. The one thing I will admit to you right now, very option, is that this ride, on the rotations, you only do 3 full rotations once you get on the ride. So this ride goes very, very quickly. So just know that if this ride attraction is a very long wait time, maybe considering skipping it and coming back to it later. But once you are waiting in line, I highly recommend that they do actually have in the queue, they have set up multiple different instructional boards that are very good to help you understand what you're doing when you finally get on the attraction, because you only got 3 rotations. So pay attention to those boards, which will very, very help you once you get on the attraction, be able to do actually the tricks that you want to perform. And then bringing us to the last ride of our land, we have Hiccup's Wing Gliders, which is the simple basic coaster of the land. That is a pretty fun coaster that has some pretty impressive animatronics on it, but it is a very simple little coaster that the kids, I think, would probably enjoy if you are traveling with little ones. Moving over to our next land, we have Super Nintendo World, and this is a very, very fun land. And will give it the award that this one probably has the best reveal after coming out of the portal, which I think is really, really great. And it has some great kinetic energy, as much like the Mario games itself. There's a lot of things moving in this land that make it feel very alive. And the other thing I would also say is that this is a land that is best experienced at night. So if you're going to see saving anything for your park experience day for the afternoon later when the sun goes down, this is one of those that I might save, as it is a really cool experience at night. Moving into our first attraction at this land, we have Mario Kart Bowser's Challenge, which is a ride that has a very, very good queue. They did a very good job at translating this cartoon animated world, that of the Mario world, to this queue very well. And once you get onto the attraction, this is a very, very simple shooter kind of attraction that I will admit is very accurate considering most blaster attractions you're going to find at most parks, as this one fully actually goes from where you're facing with your eyes, as they use a sensor and goggles. So it's very, very accurate when it comes to your shooting, which I do actually prefer. But I will admit there is a steering mechanic on this ride that I found very unnecessary, and kind of just felt like they had nothing else to do and wanted to emulate Mario Kart, so they just threw it on there last minute. But other than that, this is a really, really fun ride that I do think is one of the better shooters that I've been on. Next up, we have Yoshi's Adventure, and I'm going to be completely honest, guys, that this is a ride that gives you some very, very good views of Super Nintendo World, but it is very, very short. This ride only lasts maybe like 5-10 minutes. It is a very short ride. The instructions they give you are very, very unclear for what you're even supposed to be doing on it. And I'm going to be honest, if the wait time for this ride is more than 10 minutes, I'd recommend skipping it and waiting until it is less than 10 minutes, because it is definitely not worth it to wait more than 10 minutes for this attraction. It is very, very short. And then moving over to the kind of subland that exists in Super Nintendo World, Donkey Kong Country, we have our final ride of Super Nintendo World being Minecart Madness. And this is a very, very fun coaster that has a very, very cool ride system that I really do enjoy. And it's a very, very simple, short little coaster that I did really enjoy. The one thing that I will admit for this ride is that the single rider line on this attraction is very pointless, as most rides actually that I've talked about have a really good system where the single rider line does get you on the attraction in relatively short amount of times. Here on Minecart Madness, I started in the single rider line when I'm with my family, and we didn't move for a collective 20 minutes, as the ride vehicles on Minecart Madness only sit 4 people. So unless you're lucky enough to have a family of 3 wait in the other line, they're not pulling from the single rider at all. So this is a very difficult ride to get on through single rider. So if the single rider line is long, I would just highly recommend just going in the regular line, because you will get on faster in that line than the single rider line, if you can believe it. Moving over to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Ministry of Magic, and this is definitely one of the lands I have the most thoughts on as a hardcore Harry Potter fan. This land is definitely the weakest, I think, of the 3 Harry Potter lands at the Universal Resort, as the location of France is really cool. I do like getting this different kind of style for the world of Harry Potter. The Fantastic Beasts theming is pretty well at here. Of course, you're going to be able to find some pretty good shops, as you got a good candy store, the good wand shop, and even tons of other things you're going to love from the Harry Potter world, and even a couple good food locations. And of course, like, the whole pull of the Harry Potter world is actually the wands, which is pretty cool. And the thing I love, again, is at this park is that you can use a wand that you've bought at any of the other Universal parks. So if you have previously visited Universal Studios Florida or Universal Islands of Adventure and have bought a wand at either Diagon Alley or Hogsmeade, you can use those wands here at Ministry of Magic, which means you don't have to buy a full new wand. Although I will also bring into account that they're at the wand shop here in Epic Universe, there are certain wands that are not sold, as they're Ollivander exclusives. So if you're traveling here expecting to get one specific kind of wand because it's your canon wand for Harry Potter, just know that you may need to wait until you go to the other parks to get that wand, because they are not sold here at this park. This brings us to our first and only real attraction of the land, Harry Potter and the Battle at the Ministry. And this is a very different kind of attraction to the other Harry Potter attractions, where the queue is the best part of this whole attraction, as the queue is really, really great in this attraction. And of course, as this attraction does have long wait times, you're going to be spending a lot of time in this queue, so at least it looks nice. But I will admit the ride itself is very stiff, as it kind of is an elevator attraction, much like Tower of Terror. So this attraction can feel kind of stiff. And when I actually ride, I did have a couple malfunctions where certain screens were bugging out, and a couple animatronics were actually stiff and still. So that's a little unfortunate, but otherwise, this is a pretty decent little attraction. And if you're a hardcore Harry Potter fan, you'll probably enjoy your time on it. But at the same time, if you don't care about the queue, I would maybe recommend doing a single rider for this line, as it's probably better. And then this is the only time I'm actually going to bring up any of the shows for the different lands, is we're going to talk about Les Cirque Arcanu, which is a little fun puppet kind of circus show that exists in this land. And this is a really kind of cool show that has some pretty impressive puppetry work. But I will admit that the show is really short. Like, I swear, I felt like this thing could have been way longer than it was. And to me personally, I know that this has been hyped up by many people that have visited the land, and even the documentaries they've made on Epic Universe hype this thing up incredibly. I might skip this if you don't have it in your schedule to get back here, because it really is not that worth it. And it's also one of those things where if you do try to come see it, you only really need to see it once. It's not one of those kinds of shows where you're going to be coming back every single time you visit the resort for me. And then this brings us to our last land at Epic Universe, that being Dark Universe. And this is one of my favorite themed lands at the entire resort, at the entire park, as this is a really well themed land, taking that classic style from the various different monster movies and translating them really well into this really cool Darkmoor village that I really enjoyed. And much like Super Nintendo World, this is a land that I think is best experienced at nighttime. So if you're talking it up, I would actually split your park in half, do Ministry of Magic and Burke in the daylight, and then do Dark Universe and Nintendo once that sun goes down. Because even I know Nintendo was a meh, but highly Dark Universe was basically designed to be done at night. So I highly recommend doing it at nighttime. This brings us to the first attraction we have in this land, that being Monsters Unleashed, the Frankenstein Experiment, which this is a ride that I have so much praise to give, as the queue alone is so beautiful on this attraction, and it's so worth waiting in it, even if you have to, because the wait times I've found for this attraction are very, very short. And I will admit that also this ride does actually have 2 pre-shows. And on my visit, I actually missed the second one, as they weren't running it because the Victoria Frankenstein animatronic was down, so they were repairing that. So I did miss the second pre-show, but it's not super integral to the thing. And then that happens when you actually get onto the physical ride, and I hate to be cliche, but it is the best ride at the entire park. It is such a good attraction, using that one-armed vehicle ride system that they previously used on Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, and it makes for such a great experience, blending great screens, sets, animatronics into an experience unlike any other. This is, again, a ride that I would not skip under any circumstances. It is that good. Then that brings us to the other ride, a ride we have in the land, that is Curse of the Werewolf, which is a very simple kind of coaster, but it is a very different kind of coaster, as it uses the ride vehicles where the cart itself actually twists on a hinge as it goes around the different turns, which is great. And this means that actually, based on where you sit, the ride will be different every single time you ride it, as based on where you're sitting, the vehicles turn more or less. So it is a very fun ride to ride multiple times that I did enjoy very, very much. And that brings us to the end of my tips and tricks regarding every single land at Universal Epic Universe. So before we close out for today, I'm going to go ahead and rank a couple of things, starting with the different lands at the park. And starting off our list at number 5, my least favorite land at at Epic Universe is going to go to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Ministry of Magic. Look, I am a huge Harry Potter fan, and I just found this land very, very disappointing, as the Les Cirque Arcanu show is disappointing. Battle of the Ministry has a great queue, but the ride itself felt very stiff and was uninteresting. The magic is nothing special that you can't find at the other parks, and overall, Harry Potter, as a hardcore Harry Potter fan, this land kind of let me down, unfortunately. Then at number 4, I have How to Train Your Dragon Isle of Berk. Again, huge How to Train Your Dragon fan, but I did find this land a little lackluster, as it does have a really good ride in the form of Hiccup's Wing Gliders, but the other attractions are kind of lackluster. The food, though, is solid in this land, and it does save it from being anything like last place. Next brings us Super Nintendo World, which I love the kinetic energy of this world. This is a great way to bring the Mario franchise to life in a very fun way. It has some stellar attractions, a lot of things to do in Super Nintendo World, but also has a couple things that I think are huge letdowns, so it doesn't get to go any higher. Then at number 2, I have Celestial Park. Surprisingly, the main hub of the park is surprisingly better than most of the lands, as there's so much to do here in Celestial Park, not only from the attractions being really, really solid, with great food, some great shops, and even some great shows that happen here throughout the day, not mentioning also that ending day show. So Celestial Park gets to be number 2, surprisingly. And number 1, I gotta go with Dark Universe. This land is beautiful, especially when you're doing it at night. It perfectly captures that creepy essence I love from those old Hollywood monster movies, and this easily has the best track record when it comes to food and rides, easily making it my favorite land at Epic Universe. Then going into the ride specifically, at number 11, my least favorite ride at the entire park is going to go to Yoshi's Adventure. This ride is way too short to justify its own and it doesn't justify its own existence. It's boring. The instructions on what you're supposed to do are super unclear. And if this ride is anything over 10 minutes wait time, skip it. Come back later in the day. It is not worth waiting more than 10 minutes for this thing. At number 10, I got Fire Drill. This is a fun, simple little water attraction just to cool you off in the middle of the day. But again, if you're visiting on a day where it's a little bit chillier, you're probably not going to want to even do this. So it's one of those that maybe can be skipped on most people's visits. Bringing us up one more, we have Dragon Racers Rally. Again, this is a fun little ride that has some good ideas put into it with the mechanic of using the wings on your gliders to kind of flip around. But the fact that you only get 3 rotations feels very underwhelming and feels kind of like a ripoff. So I can't really put this one any higher. Then at number 8, I have Harry Potter and the Battle of the Ministry. Again, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, and this hurts me more than you can believe. But this ride just felt very, very stiff. There were multiple parts of it that were malfunctioning for me when I personally visited. The queue is solid, but unfortunately, the ride is not good enough to justify me putting it any higher. At number 7, I have Constellation Carousel. Fun little carousel to cool yourself off on during the day. But again, it's a it's not going to go it's not like something I'm flocking to every time I go to the park. At number 6, I got Minecart Madness. This is a fun little ride that has a really cool ride vehicle and some really good thrill moments on the attraction. But that single rider line really made me angry, so I can't really justify putting this any higher. At number 5, I have Hiccup's Wing Gliders, which again, really fun little coaster that definitely the kids will also enjoy if you're traveling with little kids. The animatronics on this ride are pretty impressive, but at the end of the day, this is basically a simple coaster that doesn't offer too much out of the ordinary, so it doesn't get to go any higher. At number 4, I have Bowser's Challenge Mario Kart, which is a fun little blaster attraction I found myself really enjoying, but again, there is just more I wanted out of it. At number 3, I have Curse of the Werewolf, which is a great roller coaster that, again, changes pretty much every time you ride it based on which row you sit in. So it is very much a ride coaster I am begging to re-ride. At number 2, Stardust Racers. This is a highlight of the whole park, having 2 different tracks that are both amazing. There's some great moments to be had throughout this coaster, and I love it more than anything. But like I alluded to in the tips and tricks, at number 1 is going to go to Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein Experiment. If there is any ride at this entire park that I beg you not to skip, it is Monsters Unchained, the Frankenstein Experiment, because it is a beautifully done attraction that is easily taking my pick for the best ride at Epic Universe. So that concludes our video. So I hope you enjoy your trip to Universal Epic Universe, and I hope that the trip is everything you want now that you know the tips and tricks and what I personally enjoyed at the park myself. So thank you guys all very much for watching. Hope to see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.